Yeah.
I mean, you
All right.
can, but
Yeah. I mean, I see our guest is in the background. Let's bring in our guest.
Hello,
Doc,
good evening, gentlemen.
good
Dr. Munilal,
evening.
how are you?
Good evening, Dr. Mullenwell.
Fine,
Oh,
thank you so much for your kind invitation.
yeah. So, Dr. Munilal, tell us a little bit about what's going on in your constituency. Your constituency has water. Everything is going good. You know.
Well, the people are in my constituency, as you may know, is the constituency of Oropouche East in the south of Trinidad. A very peaceful, loving community, historically based on agriculture and manufacturing, small, retail, industry, and so on. So it's very peaceful. Of course, like the rest of the country now, we have faced some difficulties in terms of, crime, water, infrastructure, that sort of thing. So it's the same problems that we face that others face, but is a community that is well rooted and has good bonds, social and cultural bonds, and we have a lot to be proud of in that part of Trinidad and this part of the world.
So, Dr. Munilal, we see people now getting the property tax bill, right? And I have had a problem with the whole population of Trinidad and Tobago paying 3% property tax because I think the tax is regressive and oppressive. That's my words, not yours.
Sure.
Right? What says you on property tax? And let me say this. I would have liked to see the UNC go after property tax a little more harder because there may be many people who may end up losing their property, and even their kids will not be able to inherit that property because they will have to pay whatever their parents couldn't pay. What says you?
Well, sure. I mean, we agree with you. I mean, we have always maintained that the property tax is oppressive and it is unjust. And as you said, I mean, across the board, it lacks, equity. Is something that we have committed to repeal and amend, as the case may be. But in the implementation of this property tax, as you would know, there are enormous amount of contradiction and issues with estimates and so on. Right now in my constituency, I must tell you that I'm taking up several cases in certain areas where the valuation in one property is 5 times higher than the valuation in the property next to it, so to speak. And you're dealing with persons in some cases. In one case, I can tell you, retired persons who are existing on a fixed pension and making ends meet on a retirement fund and so on, are now called upon to pay, according to the estimates, very exorbitant annual property tax, which is unfair, and is more unfair when you look at the neighbor next door and what the valuation is on the property just literally next door. So we have enormous appeals being filed at this time. In time, we'll see how that goes, but the property tax by itself, we have always said, is unjust, inequitable, and it really should be amended and in some cases possibly repealed and go back to what we used to call in Trinidad and Tobago the building and property taxes, which was much more fair, so to speak.
Now, the flavor of the day, Dr. Munilal, is the Strategic Service Agency with
Sure.
the situation with former director Major Roger Best and the police, going into the SSA compound, and with respect to the spy equipment and other expensive equipment that was placed under their control. Kind of bring us up to date on the situation with this SSA fiasco or disaster. And I know you guys have sent a pen a letter. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, what has happened? And I mean, I'm addressing your viewers and listeners in North America now, New York, New Jersey, and so on. What has happened is in Trinidad and Tobago, we have an agency called the Strategic Services Agency, which has legislation. There's an act of parliament that governs that. It is, in a way, similar to the American CIA institution because it's primarily a spying agency. Primarily, they do other work as well. There's a huge budget, as you could imagine, for the CIA or the FBI in America. There's a huge budget allocated to that, enormous confidentiality, secrecy, and so on. But it's effectively an intelligence gathering and spying agency with enormous capacity for use of technology to intercept communications, to tape, phone calls, with some now technology that can, infiltrate your WhatsApp and so on. So it's very important. The appointment to these offices are done by cabinet and by a letter of appointment by the president. It is independent of the police, for example. And what has happened, we were told on the weekend, just about 24 hours ago or so, that the head of that agency, retired Major Roger Best, who is known to many of us here, has been summarily removed as head of the agency. And our ambassador to the United States, Brigadier General Philip Spencer, was recalled from the United States, which itself is a very dramatic act, to be recalled overnight and returned to Trinidad and Tobago, where he came. And he has to take over as an acting director of the SSA, with Mr. Best sent on what is called administrative leave. Now, there are enormous legal issues involved in this. I prefer not to speak too much on that now because it requires research and there are legal issues as to what has happened. The effect, in fact, is that Mr. Philip Spencer, Brigadier, retired, is now in charge of the SSA. And the police moved in to secure the property. We are not told whether the police has removed any properties, any equipment, any technology, any report, any files, and so on. But it was done in a most macabre manner on, I believe, Friday night, Saturday morning or so. It was done, it was a sort of midnight decision that the police just move in. Mr. Best was sent on administrative leave. They monitored the compound. They may or may not have seized equipment, files, records. So it's a dastardly act because if there's a problem with a director, whether it's the CIA in America, Trinidad, or wherever, I mean, there's a process to remove him. You can remove a director, you can properly replace him or her, as the case may be. But this overnight type of dramatic, diabolical, dangerous development, visited us on the weekend. And this is something that we are still asking questions about. In the press in Trinidad today, there was a report that he was removed because he was hiring people from his church. He's, of course, a
Yeah,
very strong Christian and so on. Now,
yeah,
absolutely nothing is wrong with that. There's a process to hire people. Mr. Best is not the sole authority on hiring. If people are hired, whether they are from one church or another church or so on, that to me is irrelevant. There's a process to do that. You cannot remove a director because people have been hired, and they are from the same church or something. I find that ludicrous. We believe there's something deeper, there's something more dastardly at work. And tomorrow in the parliament in Trinidad, we intend to probe the government. We intend to raise the relevant questions to ask, what is this all about? Why was Major Best removed in this clandestine, surreptitious, and really diabolical manner?
I mean, I want to think that, well, it's always politics. Do you think this has something to do with politics, Dr. Monila? The
Well, I would
politicality?
tell you there are a lot of, I mean, as you can imagine, whether it's Trinidad or America, I mean, there are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around. But I mean, I prefer not to dwell on that per se, but to ask the questions to the Prime Minister. He's also head of the National Security Council. So I prefer to ask the questions to the Prime Minister directly to tell us, on what basis was this high level operative in the intelligence gathering agency removed in those circumstances of Saturday and Sunday. I mean, why did you remove him on Saturday and Sunday as opposed to Monday morning, a working day? Why did you recall an ambassador from the United States who would have already been settled there and living and working and had a full plan for his week and his month and so on? Why do you recall him in these circumstances? What really are the issues? And I prefer not to dwell on speculation and rumor and so on, but we'll have to inquire from the government as to whether there's some deeper issues. As you have said, today we have written to the chairman of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, Member of Parliament Keith Scotland, an attorney at law, and we have asked for an emergency meeting of the Joint Select Committee on National Security to inquire into this very serious and dangerous development. We have also asked that both Minister Hines, the Minister of National Security, and indeed his predecessor, Minister Stuart Young, who served as Minister of National Security while Mr. Best was there. We are asking that both of these gentlemen appear before the Joint Select Committee to answer questions as to this matter.
Do you think, what is the procedure in order for them to go before the JSC? Is there a procedure that's
No, the committee, its chairman and members must agree that this warrant an emergency meeting. We have done that before. We have summoned the commissioner of police and her team. They must agree that this warrants an emergency meeting, and letters will be dispatched to the relevant personnel, including those two ministers, and they are summoned before the parliament for interrogation and examination by the bipartisan Joint Select Committee on National Security, where we can ask as to, what is the genesis of this matter, and as this matter is unfolding, what is the cause of this matter. We can meet, incidentally, we can also meet in camera, meaning without public viewing, to discuss it if they believe it's a matter of grave national security. So we are really, the United National Congress, we are interested in summoning Mr. Hines and Mr. Young before that committee to interrogate them and examine them on this matter.
And Dr. Monilal, this is not the first time that this has happened. Back in 2015, when the new government came into power, Director Bisnath Maharaj was also relieved of his position. So,
Correct.
you
And the
know,
court later ruled that it was unlawful. Now there is an issue here, which I mean I can tell you now. Interestingly, there's a legal issue. Mr. Best was sent on administrative leave. He was not fired. He was not suspended. So he will continue to receive all his benefits, his wages, his terms and conditions of work. So he's not fired. He's not dismissed. So I think what they are doing is trying to protect themselves from liability, protecting themselves from a lawsuit in terms of unfair dismissal. And that's why they sent him on administrative leave as opposed to firing him. But there are serious issues. I would like to say that the Act of Parliament, the Strategic Services Act of Parliament, does not provide for an acting director. So the Act provides for what is called a director, so that Mr. Brigadier General retired Philip Spencer is an acting director, but there's no position in law there for an acting director. I don't think he can assume any powers of the director. Then the other point related to that, of course, is that Mr. Roger Best is still the director of the SSA, although he's on administrative leave. He is still the director. He's not incapacitated. He's not out of the jurisdiction. He's still the director. So that we have created now a constitutional crisis. That who gives instructions? The director who is on administrative leave is still the substantive director, while the law does not provide for an acting director as the government purported to appoint. So these are burning and troubling questions that will engage, the parliament and the constitutional lawyers and so on.
so
Mr.
go ahead, Tommy.
Munilal, if I may
Uncle
just,
Tommy.
Uncle Tommy. I like that.
uh,
Uncle Tommy.
yes, indeed, that's me.
Yes.
If I may just change gears a little. Yesterday, or should I say last evening, we saw the leader of St. Kitts, not St. Kitts, St. Lucia's opposition requesting the cooperation, or should I say the joining together of the various oppositions in the Caribbean. What do you think could be done from what he proposes?
Well, we had a very successful anti-crime symposium last evening in Sandy Grande. It is being organized by the Office of the Leader of the Opposition of Trinidad and Tobago. Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa addressed that very, very large gathering. The guest speaker there were several speakers, but I think the key speaker there was the former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, now opposition leader, Mr. Alan Chastanet. And he made a very compelling argument to suggest that in the Caribbean as a whole, there is need to build alliances and build an integrative approach by all the leaders of the opposition in the CARICOM, because the opposition is a he made a good argument that the opposition is a constitutional office. It is provided for in the constitution of these CARICOM territories, and therefore it has significant impact and a significant role in law, in development, and in society. And governments in the Caribbean has, been accused time and time again of sidelining, of alienating, of neglecting the views of the opposition. And both himself and Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, in discussions, agreed that it is time that the leaders of the opposition in the CARICOM form some type of alliance, some type of platform that they can articulate on behalf of what really is a significant population in the Caribbean. Because if you look at the opposition parties and the amount of votes and the amount of people who support them, they consider a very, very significant constituency, CARICOM wide. So I think this was a very, very important initiative by Mrs. Prasad Bisesa and Mr. Chastanet that deserve our attention, certainly, and our support.
Now, Dr.
Okay,
Monilal, go ahead, Tommy.
yeah, but what I was thinking is that whoever is in governance is responsible for the entire population, and
Correct.
the main function of the opposition was to make sure that they do and what's correct, and they keep their feet to the fire.
Sure. Well, of course. I mean, the role of the opposition is really to keep a government in check, to speak to issues of accountability, responsibility, disclosure, good governance, justice, equity. The opposition provides a very, very important role in governance in the Caribbean and in what we typically call the Westminster model. That is very, very critical. But hitherto, up to now, we have not had a sort of union, a sort of collaboration between leaders of the opposition. We have collaboration through the CARICOM framework for heads of government. So heads of government are in touch, on a frequent basis. Heads of government will be in touch and so on. But the leaders of the opposition are seldom, in touch that way, and they do not, integrate and discuss policies and solutions and so on. So I thought the idea last evening merits serious consideration.
Don't you believe that it's even much more important to have a true Caribbean unity?
Well,
And
we need to build a platform for Caribbean unity that will deal not only historically with social and cultural unification, but by economic integration, and now increasingly by our common threat, our security threat. Because last evening we also learned of this, raging criminal offensive in St. Lucia and elsewhere. Just when you thought Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica were the two hubs of criminal activity, you discover that it is now spreading like a parasite to the Eastern Caribbean territories, and that is something, it is a serious cause for concern.
Dr. Monilal, there is a $1 million question, and I know you know for a fact that you wouldn't have left here tonight without us asking you that
Well,
question.
I don't know of and I don't even know of a dollar question.
Well, we going on here. We we
But
jumping
tell me,
over
is that in US currency or TT
US,
currency?
US, US currency. not,
Let
not
me hear
TT,
you.
not TT, because somebody was asking a question. Will Trinidad devalue the dollar? Let me see what is that. Will Trinidad and Tobago dollar be devalued? Since just talk about that, somebody was asking this question. Will Trinidad and Tobago dollar be devalued? That was a question that come from the chat. Let's just say that. I'm gonna get back to the $1 million question.
Yes, yes, of course.
Uh, so so here it is, right? We know for a fact, Dr. Munina. Well, we don't know for a fact, but we know that in the past you challenged Mrs. Kamala Prasad Busesa for the leadership of the UNC. Was that in 2015 or 2016?
2015.
2015, right? So we got that correct, right? There's been rumblings within the UNC that during the next internal election, Dr. Roodal Monilal will challenge Mrs. Kamala Prasad Busesa for political leadership of the UNC. Is that fact or is that fiction?
Well, what I can tell you, I mean, is that I have been a lifelong member of the United National Congress, and indeed a founding member of the party for 34 years or so that we have been established. There is no leadership election in the future for the United National Congress, according to our rules and our constitution. An election for the leader of the party is due, I believe, in 2025,
Correct.
but
Correct.
certainly not this year. There's no vacancy. I have supported Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa for the last decade or so. I have worked with her. We have a very, very good working relationship. I give my support to her. We have been working together day by day and building our party, unifying our country. We are very, very positive about the future, and there's no election in sight. So, therefore, I'm not a contender in any election. I have great respect for Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. We work together, and I can tell you that we are very confident that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa will be returned as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is how we will approach this issue.
So what about others who in the UNC who may look at it from a different perspective and may want to think that, somehow they want to go in a different direction as far as the leadership
Well,
of the
what I
UNC
can
is
say, and I mean, let me make the point. I mean, I don't think you all. I'm also one of three, but I'm a deputy political leader of the party at this time. So I serve at a relatively high office in the party as well as a deputy political leader. And all members of our party, like any other party, are entitled to their ambition, are entitled to aim, are entitled to occupy high office of any kind. This is a right that you have when you're a member of a party. All I can say is that when the time comes and there are proper elections in the party, all members are correct, and they are in their right to challenge anyone, whether it's a political leader or deputy political leader or anyone. But those things really ought to happen within a framework and within the rules of the party. And when the elections are called, as they must be called, all parties need to have elections. Whoever is interested, whoever they can throw their hat in the ring. If they don't have a hat, they can buy a hat and throw it in the ring. So
Mhm.
there's no problem with that. My view is very open. I'm very flexible. All members are entitled to challenge for any position they want. But what you are not entitled to do is to destabilize and undermine and create unnecessary ripples in the waters when we are really focused on the PNM and removing the PNM from the government of this country, because they have done untold, almost irreparable damage to this country. And I think that they are the opposition in waiting, and we must be strong and solidified and united to remove them.
so Dr. Monilal, as a deputy political leader, we see that Ms. Michaela Pandey and the Patriotic Front is coming back into, well, they never left, but back into the political domain. Do you see an alliance between the Patriotic Front and the UNC?
What I can say is, I think not this Monday, but the Monday before, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa made a very important call for all parties in opposition to the PNM who share our vision, our principles, and our values to unite. And we are indeed elated that one party, the People's Empowerment Party, PEP, Mr. Philip Alexander and others, have taken up the challenge and they have indicated their support. The NT, as you know, led by Mr. Gary Griffith, is already a partner is already our ally, has been working with us, standing with us, walking with us. So we are building that momentum.
Oh boy. I think
No audio.
his internet. Yeah. Yeah. Let me see if you could see me. Dr. Munira, your audio. Your audio. Your audio.
Audio left.
Audio.
No audio. We can't hear you.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if we could get him. No, we're not having any audio. Okay.
Not
Okay.
hearing a word.
Yeah. I think he may have touched it by mistake. Audio. Audio.
Check,
No
check,
audio.
check your handset.
Yeah. I think he may have touched it by mistake. Oh boy. He get log out. So folks, we see if we could get him back. Let me see. Let me send him a message. Mhm. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Hold a minute. You got logged out. Can you log back in? Okay, so folks, we are talking with deputy political leader of the UNC,
Dr.
uh,
Roodal Monilal.
Dr. Roodal Monilal. And it was, oh, here we go. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, here we go. Dr.
Are
Monilal.
we back? I know
Yeah,
our time was limited. Are we back?
yeah, you back, you back, you back. You know, some people will say that's another party sabotage. That's what some people might say. You know.
But this is innate. I tell you, I've been involved in this business 34 years now. As I said before, guys, I've seen many people come, I've
Uh,
seen many people go, and I've seen many people come back. So
mhm.
it's all par for the course, as we say.
Right. Just before we got logged out, you indicated that. Are you saying to the people that the NT and the UNC are back in good terms? Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
in a way, we never parted company. I mean, we will always have a difference of opinion on this matter or that matter or so on. But that is our alliance for the local government election. Mr. Griffith continues his work with his political party. We continue our work. I mean, I've been in touch with Mr. Griffith up to today, right through the day on different matters and so on of national concern. We work together. I'm in touch incidentally with Mr. Philip Alexander as well. I'm in touch with other persons and so on. So we are building, we are creating a platform for unity that we can build a platform, a national platform that brings people together. And I want to make the point that the UNC has a fundamental commitment to national unity because we believe that it is not national unity just for the sake of uniting with people and removing the PNM, but it has to do with mobilizing all the resources of our country to take the country forward. So we have a development framework that includes unity. It is not ad hoc, it is not by the way, it is not Vikey Vikey. It has to do with developing our country and mobilizing all our human resources. And I think that was the vision, of course, of Mr. Bastiel Pandey, our founder, and that continues today.
You know, Dr. Munilal, there are some UNC people who are very concerned about PEA. As even today, he was still going after Gary Griffith and some of the most violent, vicious things he have said even a week ago about the political leader of the UNC, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa. How is the UNC going to be able to rein in, and my word, not yours,
Yeah, sure.
to
Well, as I say, I mean,
rein in PA? How are you all
well,
going to rein in PA from, because he have said some of the most vicious and vile things about Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa. And just today, he's making a video going after Gary Griffith.
yeah, well, let's put it this way. I mean, we are still, in a raw state in terms of the any discussion or any interaction with Mr. Alexander and his PEP. I can tell you, I've been in touch with some of the members of that party and officers over a period of time, and we have a sense of understanding as to our common framework, as to the importance of unity to the country's national development. And in the coming day or days or so on, it may well be that I myself would meet Mr. Alexander, have a discussion, and try to, come to some common ground in understanding that while we are happy for him to be part of our team and to be united, we are not happy if he's attacking our ally and our partners and our persons who have stood with us, stand with us, and walk with us. I mean, it's very clear. So these things require some political tact, but in the coming days, I think we can work those things out.
And
So go ahead, Tommy.
Dr. Monilal, we have seen the results of cooperation between the various parties on two occasions prior to this time.
Sure.
How do we this time ensure that we're gonna get it right? Have we learned, and do we have a formula?
Well, the thing is that the first is that this country yearns for unity. There's a yearning in this country for national unity. If you just move from politics, take away politics from our minds now. When this country united in 1989, I believe, behind our soca warriors, there was a unity of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. When we unite behind our cricket team, whether it's Trinidad the Night Riders, whether it is the West Indies team in particular, when we unite behind our cultural artists, our representatives of this country, there's this deep-seated yearning for unity. And as politicians, it is our duty as well to work with that end in mind, that the people yearn for unity. In terms of the formula, it will change. The formula in 1986 would not be the formula in 2010. The formula in 2025 may be different. There's a different formula because also I must tell you there are different personalities. Each personality has his or her own strengths and their own challenges. So you work with that in mind and you try to build a framework of respect, of understanding, and of policy. That we agree on a policy agenda, we have understanding, and we have respect for each other. I think those are important principles in going forward.
So here's a question from the chat, Dr. Munila.
Sure.
As deputy political leader of the UNC, in the event of a political deadlock at the polls, will the UNC be open to a partnership with the Tobago People's Party?
Well, what I can say is that we are open to partnerships with anyone except the PNM, and and the personalities there are personalities well known to us. Mr. Farley and his team. Mr. Duke, of course, is known to us as well. Mr. Ashwa Jack and others there. Regrettably, as you know, Mr. Hochoy Charles passed recently, but we are in the we are friends for many years and many decades, united in a common struggle against authoritarian government, against dictatorship, against oppressive governments of the PNM, whether in Trinidad or Tobago, so that there's already a foundation of unity between Mr. Farley's team and the United National Congress and other parties in opposition to dictatorship, in opposition to oppression, in opposition to inequality and discrimination. We have a foundation already, so that whatever political circumstances arise, we are confident that we can do what we have to do to save both Trinidad and Tobago.
Now, you just spoke about different formula, and many people may ask the question, can the UNC win the 2025 general election as currently structured with the same people in the same positions in
Well,
2025?
I want to say politics is dynamic. It changes. There's a fluidity in politics. Politics changes rapidly. You can blink and everything changes in a moment. Um, the United National Congress has 19 seats in the nation's parliament. We are 2 seats away from a majority. We are within hand reach. We are within a heartbeat. We are within striking distance. We have to work very hard because, as you know, those 2 seats are premium seats. We have to work very hard so that winning is very possible. We are extremely positive about our chances of winning. But unity is important because unity is important to develop our country. So if you want to develop your country, you must unite all the human resources of your country to take the country forward. But we are very confident. We are 2 seats away, and those seats, as you know, have been lost by 1,000 votes, 500 votes, or whatever the case may be. So we are really very, very close in terms of winning. And I think that is a worrying problem for the PNM and for Dr. Rowley in particular, that we are so close, because don't forget, he also has a challenge in the event that he loses the two Tobago seats. He needs to win two Trinidad seats held currently by the UNC. So he has a big challenge as well. And this is the most unpopular government ever, as you know, by fact, is the government that has presided over the most murderous era in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. So that they will have a lot of work to do as well. But the PNM has always been a formidable opposition indeed. So, we have to fight, and we have to fight very hard.
Now, Dr. Monilal, I know you got to leave in a short.
Well,
We in,
we agreed for 20 minutes, but I think we have exceeded that a
yeah,
long time ago. But I
here's
don't
the
get
one.
a chance to talk to you all often, so it's no problem.
All right, here's the one before you go. We here in the diaspora who have dual citizenship
Sure,
have been clamoring to be able to vote at a consulate, a consulate in New York, a high commission in
sure,
England,
sure,
another consulate in Florida, and so on.
sure.
What is the UNC's position on, I will say, absentee ballot voting in a general election?
Well, what I can say is the current state of the law is the residential requirement, as you know, to reside in Trinidad and Tobago before you have the right to vote. It is something that we have spoken about, not only in opposition, but in government as well. We have spoken about this matter, and it's something that requires, I think, a bit more consultation, not only in Trinidad, but in the diaspora as well. So I think a good framework is to have discussions in the diaspora with citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who live there, who are contributing to that society as well, and can contribute to Trinidad and Tobago, and to ascertain whether it is their wish, for example, to vote. It may well be that they do not even wish to vote, but we have to ascertain that. And if that is a prevalent concern, we can look at it in terms of legal change, in terms of changing the law to as other countries do, as you know, to ensure that persons who are citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding their current residential, status, are allowed to vote. But it's something that requires much more consultation. It's something that requires legal and statutory change and so on. And it's something that we can well put on the front burner, because there may be, in the changing period of globalization and integration, this may be an issue that we will want to consider.
So here's one last question from the
Sure.
chat. What will happen with the refinery if the UNC wins the election?
Well, it's very clear. I mean, first to begin, we are in opposition now, so we don't have at our disposal any technical reports or any scientific analysis of the state of the refinery. All we know is it has been, quote unquote, mothballed. Well, now, what that means to, we don't know. But anyway, it has been mothballed, and it's there. There's a feeling that it has been abandoned for so long that it may not be operationalized. It may not be in a position where it can function again. In fact, a technical man told me recently, he said if you plug on the refinery, it might blow up San Fernando. So we have
Mm.
to see. We have to get first, as soon as we return to office, we will undertake some type of scientific, technical assessment of the refinery. Once it is in a position where it can be operational, I think that we owe a duty to the country to move post haste to ensure that either local or a blend of local and foreign investors and companies and so on move immediately to reopen the refinery, because that refinery could be, I mean, it could be a great source of revenue in the context of developments in Guyana and incidentally Suriname as well. So that refinery really could be a great source of strength to our economy in the coming years and decades. but we need to do a technical and scientific assessment of it to see whether it is feasible or not in terms of having it operational.
And last one before you go.
Sure,
We know that the oil spill have been somewhat devastating to Tobago, right?
sure,
And we still can't find out who is the owner of the vessels, or they're saying some owner from Panama and so on and so forth.
sure.
What is the UNC's position on the
Well,
oil?
I have outlined that case on Sunday, 2 days ago, I believe, where I told them, had we been in office, I mean, we would have come to the bottom of that already. So far, 420,000 gallons of oil mixed with water have been vacuumed from the ocean. It is now spreading to Grenada, to Bonaire, to Aruba, and so on. And to this day, the Trinidad and Tobago government cannot confirm, they cannot even confirm what is the oil, whether it's bunker fuel or some other type of oil. They cannot confirm who are the owners of that barge, who are the owners of the tugboat called Solo Creed, I believe. Where have they gone? Who accounts for this act of environmental terrorism? They cannot answer these questions, and that is a fundamental problem. Is it speaks to incompetence, to cluelessness, to hopelessness. I mean, the people who dropped that boat there when it capsized and ran away, they knew they were doing something wrong. That's why they ran. Nobody abandons a value. If you drop a gold chain on the ground, you don't run, you don't drop the gold chain and take off and run. You stay to pick it up because it has value. The same way oil has value. So, but the people who did that knew that something was amiss, that something was wrong, and they ran away. And the Trinidad and Tobago government, with all the technology and institutions at their disposal and the capacity for international collaboration, they have not even issued what is called a preliminary report or given preliminary findings on this matter. And that is a very, very serious matter that after almost a month, I believe now, they cannot give preliminary findings on this. It speaks to a horrible level of cluelessness and incompetence on the part of Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, the Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Energy, and the related agencies.
Could we see a commission of inquiry into this too?
You may well think that there could be a commission of inquiry or some type of inquiry into this matter. I've called for a forensic criminal investigation into this matter to trace what is called the digital footprints of the Gulfstream barge and the Solo Creed. You can trace it and you can get the technology, you can get the resources, you can get the international collaboration to find the owners. This is something that can be done easily. The fact that it is not being done or it has not been done speak, I think, to incompetence or to cover up.
Dr. Mulila, we want to thank you so very kindly.
Thank you, guys. Thank you,
Any
Mr. Wall Street and Uncle.
Thank you, Dr. Munalal.
any closing words before you go?
Well, let me say that I believe, unless I'm mistaken, this is my first opportunity to speak to you and to
No,
you.
no, you was here before. You was here before.
I was here
Short.
before. All right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A short visit, but you was here
A
before.
short. Well, great to be on a longer visit, and thank you all very much for the invitation. I want to
Thank
tell our
you.
folks in New York, New Jersey, and anywhere in North America that is tuning to this broadcast to have faith, have hope. We believe that this country is, certainly worthy of saving and rescuing, and we are on that path now, and we are very confident that once we build the unity, once we build the teamwork, once we do the hard work on the ground, we will be returned to office and we'll rescue this country from the very serious economic and social problems that we face today. And we can return as a paradise and as a center, a hub of Caribbean business in this century. Thank you all. God bless you all.
Thank you
Same.
very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you. God
All
bless.
right. Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah, there we have it.